What's happening, my friends? Welcome to this episode of Carseats and Coffee. I'm your host, Thomas McMahon. And in this episode, I'm meeting with a very special individual, Mr. Tab Pierce. Welcome to the show, my friend. All right, Tab, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast today, my friend.
Absolutely.
It's great. We actually met through the Down and Dirty course with Tim Grover, and I've met unbelievable people through that, and I'm really excited for us to jam on this session together.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited about it too. I've been looking forward to it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we even jump into you as a father, let's talk about just you as Tab. What makes Tab excited in life? Tell me about what you do for a living, some of the fun things you enjoy doing, and or just any great stories.
Wow, fun things I enjoy doing. That's probably loaded. So, as far as what I do for a living, um, I own a couple of. Well, I am majority owner of a cybersecurity firm. On the 12th, we'll be 9 years old. So moving into our 10th year, which is pretty awesome. Minority owner and sit as a chair in a cybersecurity recruiting firm, sit on a board for a couple of companies, and uh, writing a book, doing a lot of stuff. And it all sounds really cool, but in the end of the day, I'm just a schmuck just trying to make a buck. So, that's pretty much it.
Aren't we all though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So what kind of things, because that's really like loaded with responsibility, all of those things you
Yeah.
just talked about. What are some of the things that Tab does to just shut some of that off?
Man, it is so hard to shut that stuff off. And uh, one of the things that I do is, well, there's a couple of things. Well, one of them that I'll do is I actually will meditate. I'll take a 10-15 minute break throughout the day, and I'll meditate. And I always find meditation is kind of like this internal battle with myself. Like the first 5 minutes is like trying to get a 4-year-old to take a nap. It's just like I don't want to do it. I'm irritated. I'm angry. I'm saying this is stupid. And then the last 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, if I'm lucky, I'm not asleep. But I'll find out that I'm able to like kind of break away and give some thoughts. That's kind of like what I do quickly. I'll also you know take time to go out and walk at work because I spend a lot of time at work. As far as activities go, I live on the Puget Sound. My house overlooks the Puget Sound. I've got a sucky, horrible life. When I every opportunity I get, my middle son and I head out and go fishing out there. So that's kind of a blast. We try to do that, and he works with me. So usually he's always trying to like, hey, we should like take the morning off and go fishing. And I'm like, dude, we got work we got to do. And so half the time he wins and half the time I win.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's that true like give and take relationship though.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk a little bit more about that meditation thing. 'Cause,
Yeah.
a lot of dads don't talk about it. It's something that I try to practice every day as well. I
Hmm.
was trying to do two 15-minute sessions, and I'll tell you what, that worked for maybe 2 days.
Yeah.
It's just because I'm with you, like I would even say the first 2/3 of the meditation for me, it's like just trying to tell my mind to be quiet for a
Yeah,
second. You
exactly.
know? Is there a specific type of meditation that you try to practice, or is it just mindfulness, or what's the type that you try to do?
So, yeah, I'm not an expert on meditating. What I try to do is I try to clear my mind. That's really my biggest thing. Like you say, you get all these thoughts coming at you, and most of my thoughts are like, this is suck, this is stupid. I've got things I've got to do. I don't have time to do this. Or, oh yeah, this, whatever just, comes into my mind, oh, that's what I got to make, it's my turn to make dinner tonight. That kind of stupid crap that comes up. Um, I try to really, I will listen to some music. I'll listen to, I, on Audible several months ago, there was like a 31-day meditation practice, and I think I actually made it through like 18 days, but
Nice.
I think it took me like 2 months to make it through 18 days, but whatever. And that's pretty good because, it kind of guides you through different things. And I can't even remember what that's called, but it was free, which was cool. But but mostly what I do is I just focus on my breathing, and I like count in and out and try to take deep breaths, because for me, the more I can just get my breathing under control, the more I can then start to like release those thoughts and that energy and that. So, and then start to really, kind of calm down. So to me, whatever I'm listening to or not listening to, it's all about my breathing.
Nice. And was there something like an event or whatever that led you towards that, or is it just some advice that came up and someone's like, "Hey, you got to try this," or
You
what
mean
started?
meditating or breathing?
Yeah, just no, like yeah. I mean, breath kind of kicked in from day one, but I
Yeah, I
mean,
was
like,
gonna say
yeah,
somebody slapped me on the butt and I started breathing, man.
yeah,
That's all I remember,
yeah.
or
No,
don't remember.
the meditation portion, like, because a lot of people don't practice it, so I'm just curious why, like, you decided to.
Um, you know, a little bit of the reason why is desperation. You probably know, just from the down and dirty, some of the history of my company, and some of the troubles that we had, and just the fight that I had to get the business back to, sustainability, and then back to thriving. And it was just incredibly hard, as I had, people pounding on the door to get money from me. I had a hard money lender that was just absolutely ruthless, and I had uh, the IRS and all this stuff, and I mean, it's really the kind of the premise of what my book is about, of how I've overcome that. And I mean, we had $750,000 in debt. It was no small chump change. We paid it off in about 3 years. Um, but along the way, I was just desperate. And meditation was kind of like one of those things where I was like, I just got to get away. I got to get away from me. I mean, sometimes it wasn't like I just need to get away from people. I just had to get away from me. And I don't know if somebody told me or if it was just instinctive or what, but it was kind of like, go somewhere, shut your phone off, don't take your laptop, don't tell anybody where you're at. You're going to go MIA for 15 minutes, and or whatever. And I would just sit there and try to calm myself down, just like, because I'd be freaking out about stuff, and most of which never came true. But I'd freak out about stuff, and but I'd meditate and I would calm myself, and sometimes I could do it quickly and sometimes I couldn't, and but man, that was just made all the difference. So now I still get keyed up all the time. I'll just be, sometimes I'll just be like, oh man, I feel keyed up. What's going on? I'll try to analyze why I'm keyed up. I'm like, man, my life is great. Why am I feeling this way? And I'll go and meditate, and a lot of times that'll like kind of, it's almost like it resets something. So,
No,
and
I
I'm not a woo woo person, I'm not like, so the whole idea of meditating just kind of was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but it works. So I don't really care. It's just because it works.
absolutely. No, I think I agree with you. I think, there's so many different practices and things out there that you get caught up with, but
Yeah.
you find just a basic practice of it that works for you. I think that's good. I think it's also a good tool for dads, though, to be honest, even if
Oh
you're not
yeah.
going in and sitting in a room and being quiet and still and hum and all the stuff that they want
Yeah.
you to do, even if you could literally walk out, take, 5 deep breaths, control yourself, you can handle situations a lot
So,
better.
so one of the things, and this just reminded me of that. Um, when my children were young, I have four children. Well, I have four adult children now, but I had four children, and I can remember sitting in the driveway of my house after having just like a really crappy day, and just having to tell myself, you have to sit here until you're able to leave all that crap in the car and not take it into them. And I
Hmm.
would just like, I don't think I ever thought of it as meditating, but I think that's what I was doing is I would just be like, you got to get that out of you. You got to leave that here. You don't want to walk in and then just get pissy with your wife or your children or whatever. And you got to be able to turn that off. And so, I think even back then I was using it, but just didn't realize that I was using it.
Absolutely. And to be able to identify that knowing yourself enough and having that self-awareness to say, if I go in right now under this current state, it's just not going to be good for
Yeah.
anybody.
I mean, I can remember sitting out in the car going, I'm either going to walk in and not know, and the kids are going to know that something's weird, or I'm going to walk in and I'm going to be like, hey, what's going on? And everybody's going to be like, hey, dad's home. Yay. And it was like, I could automatically just kick off that energy for the family. And just walking in that door, however I walked in that door made all the difference. It made a difference for me, but it made a difference for them. I can't say that I did that like every single time, but I know that, that the majority of the time, if I did that, things were a lot better at home.
Have you been able to share that story at all with any of your kids?
Oh yeah, yeah. I do it all the time, there's it's really weird when you have adult kids because they're different. I mean, like all of my children are different. Some of them are more demonstrative than others, and I was always like real like my son that works for me. It's kind of funny because like my dad was kind of a real like quiet, didn't say a lot of words. Like I joined the military and I came back and I didn't really have a great experience in the military through my base. I love the military and I love the servicemen, but it wasn't really my thing. And it was like I went through basic training, went through my advanced training, came back, and I said, and, I was talking to my dad, and he was like, "So what did you think?" And I was like, "Man, it's honestly not what I thought it was going to be." And he goes, "Yeah, I could have told you that." Like, well, damn, man, maybe you should have. You would have saved me a lot of trouble. I did my service, but I was like, it wasn't like, I mean, he was just like a diehard all in, but he didn't say a lot. And so I'm like this really overly talkative guy. And then my son is like my dad. And I'm like, dang, man, I got sandwiched between two guys that don't talk a lot. But then the plus side is his son is like his grandfather. So the two of us are like these crazy guys on the outside doing all this stuff. And it's like I sat to laugh because I'm like, my poor son, man. He's like, now he's sandwich. He's the middle part. So, you know, um, I share these stories with them because for him, I'm like, dude, well, I have two children that have children. And I'm like, man, you got to really make sure that you're on your game for your kids because otherwise they're like totally like, man, what's that all about? They have no clue. They're just kids. They're just like, their big thing is, like my grandson is his big thing is that his family, his mom and dad found out that he discovered where the sugar cubes were. And he was like stashing them, stuff like that. So he's a lot like his grandfather. And it's like that's his big issue. It's like, yeah, man, they took away my supply. What I mean? He doesn't have these big worries. He's got these small worries. So he doesn't need to be infected by all the things that happen to us in the world.
Right. Right. And that's like really interesting right now because my 5 year old, he's just like my father.
Yeah.
Same way. Like they speak when they feel there's a purpose to speak. Everything's like solving problems. It's like not about having fun. It's about getting the job done, and which I love because I laugh about it. I'm like, okay, I can deal with my son. Like I remember talking to my dad about the situation,
Yeah.
but it's interesting that you said that your one grandson's more worried about the little things because I feel like with my son right now, I'm like, what pressures am I putting on him, or what's he witnessing of me? Because I feel like he's worrying about things already that he shouldn't be worrying about. And I'm like, I don't recall saying that in front of him, but it makes you realize what you're doing and your actions, how important they are, right?
Oh yeah. Even my dog, when I'm like, when I have a level of discontent, my dog will look at me and she's like, "Hey, I can tell something's up. What's going on?" I mean, my dog can tell my feelings. So, I mean, how much smarter is a 5-year-old than my dog? Hopefully, a lot. But you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, uh, So yeah. I mean, I think they get the vibes. I think they get the frequency that we put out there. I mean, we're always sending a frequency out there, and they're getting it, they're catching it. I mean, you may think you're hiding it, but unless you're able to really get that frequency passed, they're going to get it. And that's life.
Absolutely. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about your grandkids, but I want to hear more about your family and how many kids. You said you have 4 kids, but a little bit more about them and how that was with you raising those individuals.
So I have 4 children. One daughter, 21 years old. uh she lives at home. She's just phenomenal. I love her. Thank goodness the teenage years are over, man. That was freaking brutal. Absolutely phenomenally brutal. Um, and then I've got 3 sons that range from 26 to 30. And uh, yeah, 7 grandchildren, 1 boy, 6 girls. Um, but what's interesting is, when my wife and I, when we were married super young and had our children pretty young. And I remember when when she was first pregnant with our oldest, and she came to me and she was like, oh, maybe she didn't. It was just a conversation about like, yeah, when um, when our baby comes, I'm not going back to work. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what? And I was shocked because we had never had this discussion that all of it was on me. And she was like, yeah, I never, I want to be a mom and I'm going to stay home and we'll make it work. And I'm like, well, right now you make more money than I do, so this is kind of an issue. And man, it was brutal. And yeah, I mean, obviously we made it work and it works great, or it worked great. um but there were a lot of things along the way where I was, man, I was fully in on my career. And one of the great, you know how it is when something bad happens and you sit back and you're like, man, I can't believe I wasted all that time doing all this stuff only to have this come out bad. And that happened to me. And I had 3 children at the time. So, I don't know, my oldest was probably 4 or 5 and my second was 3 and whatever. And I was, man, I was all in. I was general manager of this import business, based out of Taiwan. And I felt like I was a big baller and all that. And I was working 80-hour weeks, and except when they would come in from Taiwan, I would work 105-hour weeks. I would work 6 16-hour days, and then I would work one 10-hour on Sunday. It was my day of rest. I'd only work 10 hours. And then I went to one time I went to Taiwan. I'd go there all the time, and or seemed like I went there all the time. Probably didn't go there as much as I think, but I was there for several weeks, and one of them was over Thanksgiving. And my wife was super patient and everything else. And I'd put so much into this, 2 years into this business, and it was just, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, you know, I made okay money, I made good money, but it wasn't like I was making so much money that I was like, hey, this 80 hours and 105-hour weeks, man, I'm just shoving money into the bank. It wasn't like that at all because I was salaried. So I was making whatever my salary was. But I remember being in Taiwan for Thanksgiving and just like kind of at my last, like, man, this is just this. I think this is too much. I think this is too much. And I was getting ready to leave, and I was at the airport, and they said, "Hey, we need you to come back in a few weeks and stay for another month or so." And I'm like, "Well, in a few weeks it's going to be Christmas." Yeah, I know. And I just remember looking at them going, "I quit." And I just said, "I find somebody new in 2 weeks. I quit." And they were like, "Wait, wait, wait." And I just turned and like, walked to my plane, and I was like, "I'm freaking done." And I just remember going, I just spent 2 years ignoring my children and my wife. And I had nothing to prove it, or I had nothing to show for it. And that was rough. I mean, it was rough because it sucked for my career. Mostly it sucked for my family. But one of the great things that came out of it is as hard as I do and as hard as I have pushed for business, that my family's first. And it took that to kind of get it to me to kind of like have that register. It took a lot.
Absolutely. So after that experience, which obviously was an eye-opening experience for you, then this was before you started your own businesses though, right?
Oh, way before. Man, dude, I'm old. There's a
No,
lot
hey,
of stuff.
hey,
There's a lot of stuff that happened before my business kicked in.
well, but let's talk about the fact. So when you started your business, like how old were your children at that point?
Oh, wow. So 9 years ago, so my oldest would have been 21. My
Okay.
youngest would have been 12. So 12, 17, 18, 19, and 21, about that age. Yeah. So
Okay.
all of them older.
Okay. So that's good. Most of them were on their like transitioning into their adulthood kind of
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah. Now I will say that this is probably my eighth or ninth business that I've started. So there were a bunch of others that were various levels of success along the way. So yeah, they'd been through this several times.
And let's talk about that because I really am fascinated with that because I love like the world of entrepreneurship in general. And there's a lot of dads that listen right now that are in that same situation, not going the traditional route, trying to build their own businesses, but then
Yeah.
also trying to be certain types of fathers as well, husbands, all the rest. So what is some of the lessons like of maybe balance that you can share with trying to start a business? Because it's almost like creating another family in a sense, like on your own, right? So
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of fallacies out there about being a business owner, about being an entrepreneur, and a lot of them just make me laugh. Like, I'll see these memes on Facebook that'll say, "Hey, do you still, are you still a slave to the 9 to 5 job?" And I'm like, dude, are you serious? Freaking, if you're a business owner, man, you're more than a slave to a 9 to 5 job. I mean, you're a slave to like a 9 a.m. to a 9 a.m., basically 365, 7 days a week, 365. And people will say, no, that's not true. It's like, and I hear this all the time. It's like, and I'm always telling myself that because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not stuck to one thing that I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of different things. So if I if I have free time, I mean, and I'm always saying, how do I create, I chair as a minority owner one of my businesses. Within the next, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, I will start to move into a chair role with a new CEO for my primary business. The goal is to free up more time. But the thing is once I free up more time, I'm not freeing up time so I can go learn how to scuba dive or golf. I know you just had Corey on. Dude, I don't have a freaking idea how anybody golfs. I mean, I just don't have the patience for golf. God bless guys that golf, man, but that is not my thing. I just don't have time. I mean, meditation, I can do it in 15 minutes. Golf? Oh, no way. Well, anyway, but but the thing is I'm going to fill up my time, and I'm always looking at what can I add, what can I do, what can I create, how can I focus, how can I build, and how can I use my time and my energy well. So, the thing that I'm always thinking of is not, hey, I mean, like I saw one dude, he's like, my life is I sleep till noon and then I do this. I'm like, dude, I couldn't sleep to noon to save my life. Who the hell sleeps till noon? I mean, you going to bed at like 6 a.m.? I don't, you know what I mean? And so, um, those kind of things, maybe it's because I'm an old guy, but it just seems disingenuous when people start talking about, like the whole like 4 hour work week. I mean, I get it and I get the premise of it, but if I had a 4 hour work week, I'd be like, that's awesome. I can just fill it up with a bunch of other crap. That's,
Sure.
yeah.
Because we're going to fill our time with something.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's going to be something productive. It's
Yeah.
always going to be something productive.
So how important was conveying that message to your children growing up?
You know, it was really important. So, um, I, you know, I really wanted to instill in my children the idea of possibilities and about creating things, about being able to really take advantage of life and also to be incredibly committed to yourself and to be genuine. Um, I my both my parents were depression era children, and so like my mom was always like, "Go get a job at the post office or go get a job at the railroad because you'll always have a job and you'll always, then you can retire." And I was like, man, I cannot think of, and nothing against that, but just for me, I'm like, I can't think of anything worse. Both of them, that's what they did. I mean, my dad retired from the military and then he went on and retired from the working at a penitentiary, which he absolutely hated. Matter of fact, he didn't retire. He died the month before he was going to retire. So, you know, all of that. And so my mom retired from working for the government too, and it just wasn't my thing. And so mine was, look at all these great possibilities. Look at all these things you can do. Now, it's not like it's been rosy, and and like I haven't like sit back and gone, man, this is just a dumb, stupid path. I could be yelling all aboard or something like that, and just like collecting my paycheck and watching TV. And there were times when I sit back and I'm like, man, I would just really like to just collect a paycheck and watch TV, that's a fleeting thought, but it's a real thought.
Yeah, I was going to say, it probably doesn't last long. It's not a thought
Uh,
that you can sit there and stew over long. You're like, yeah, that really wouldn't make me happy either.
yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. It doesn't. It's funny when I get that way, um, uh, and I do. I mean, I think that's the one thing that entrepreneurs and even dads or whatever that are trying to do a lot of different things is we can end up beating ourselves up and we can get down on ourselves, and we need to be able to have something that that kind of resets us quickly, that just kind of says, kind of shakes us into thinking, man, I'm just being stupid and whiny. And for me, I had mentioned that my house overlooks the Puget Sound. I've got a hot tub. I go out there and I sit in my hot tub. I'm looking out over the sound. There's a ferry out there, and I'll sit out there and I say to myself, my life sucks. And I say it 3 times, and I can almost never get it out the third time before I'm laughing, going, dude, you can't even believe your own crap. You're having such a freaking pity party right now. And there's people out there in the world with real issues, and you're sitting in a freaking hot tub overlooking the Puget Sound saying your life sucks. Get a freaking grip. And that's, for me, that's the thing that kind of brings me back where I'm just like, okay, I got to get out of my head. Now, one of the things, like, there's a lot of them that you do. So,
Sure, I think that's just like human nature. I think we are constantly up in our heads, and we're
oh,
constantly
heck
our
yeah, man.
own worst critics, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, man, if we spoke this way to other people, we'd have no friends, zero relationships, but yet we speak to ourselves like that on the daily. It doesn't,
Oh,
I don't,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And, and we got to be careful. And this is something that's important for dads, because we live in a world where, Brene Brown talks about being vulnerable and that. And it's like, oh, man, that's great, if you're a woman. But if you're a man, nah, man, that doesn't fly. And especially, I don't know about your generation, but my generation, where it's like, everybody wanted to be, Clint Eastwood or John Wayne, and you know, being vulnerable was not something. The first time my dad was vulnerable was he was about 3 years before he died, and we were having dinner, and he just broke down and was like, "Man, I'm a failure. I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this." And I was shocked, man. I had no idea that the guy had any, like, emotions, like, or anything other than just being a powerhouse.
Hmm.
And I think we need to be okay with just realizing that we, you know, and we need to be able to express it. I mean, that's one of the things, we belong to this Down and Dirty group. Man, I mean, even the women are freaking full on testosterone. Man, there's like that thing is just all on all the time. And and sometimes we need to be able to go, you know what, that's not really life.
Hmm.
Life sometimes is, and I've had a rough couple of days because I did something. uh I had said something to a client about a month ago that didn't resonate well with me, and it was disingenuous, and I didn't handle it. I just kind of like, I'll handle it later, meaning like I'm not going to handle it later, but that was what I told myself. And it came back to bite me like 2 days ago, and he was like, "Were you BSing me?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I wasn't BSing you. Here's da 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 da." And then like 48 hours later, I'm like, "Man, I was totally freaking BSing that dude. I just flat out BS'd him."
Wow.
And I've had to come to grips, and it's a vulnerability thing that I need to do a reset, and I need to say to myself that, I need to make a change like that. I need to make a change to always be genuine, to always be truthful, to, even if, you know, no matter what, I just need to be that way. But what happens is I've spent 48 hours being vulnerable, just going, man, wow, that is not the person I want to be. I suck. I'm this, I'm that, blah, blah, blah. But if we need to be okay with saying those things, because not we don't want to do it too long. We don't want to beat ourselves up too long. We need to reach a point where the vulnerability takes us to the point where we're like, okay, enough is enough. And for me, it was enough is enough. I am going to have integrity in all things all the time. It was a reset. So, we just need to be okay with being vulnerable.
Absolutely. I think the vulnerability in order to have personal acceptance is the goal, right? Because it's like, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to let people know I'm not perfect at everything. But with that said, I'm also stating I'm really good at these other things. I have more self-awareness. I've identified with it. I'm laying it out there, so I'm not BSing somebody or making them believe that I'm living a certain life or acting a certain way or have a skill set I don't have. Just throw it out there and then be like, but move on because I can bring this and this to the table.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's uh, we've got, with all this content that's available to us. I mean, Tim Grover, amazing rock. The dude's freaking solid. There's other guys out there like Ed Milet and Andy Frisella and Grant Cardone, and the list goes on and on. And a lot of them will say, well, all you're doing is you're seeing the finished product, right? You're not seeing you're not seeing the guy 10 or 20 years ago. The only thing I would add to that is, man, what is the chance that those guys don't have bad days? What is the chance that those guys just aren't like going, man, I am not feeling it today. I feel like crap. I am a fraud. I'm a fake. I'm this. I'm that. All of the things that we say to ourselves all the time, like, I'm freaking a fraud. I'm a fake. Why am I doing this podcast? I mean, what do I know about being a dad? I mean, all of the things that might go through your head. And it's like those things are normal, but we don't hear those people saying, like, hey man, I'm just on a road like you. I am just I'm getting punched in the head, and then when I fall down, someone's kneeing me in the face. You know what I mean? That's how I feel.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we need more of that. We need more of the, I'm just not feeling it today, unless I'm like 100% dialed in all the time, firing ready to go. And sometimes that's what we see, and that's what we feel we need to be doing.
Absolutely. I was telling someone last night, they're asking me, like, why are you doing this podcast? It looked like you started it for a while and then you stepped away. And I never shared that story like on the podcast before. And I'm actually going to do an episode coming out speaking about it. But the reality was, after Tim had mentioned, like, what are you faking? It really kicked in and resonated at that point, that I was asking dads to come on my show and be vulnerable and share their stories, but I wasn't willing to do that myself.
Hmm.
So until I was ready to do that again, I wasn't going to bring the podcast back. So I walked away from, it was probably more like 5 months. Just didn't do any episodes. I left on the table. And then it was that moment, like, but that fuels me. And again, we were having those conversations within the thing,
Yeah.
that you can do all these things and please everybody else in the world, but eventually you're going to come back to, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to be faking it again. And
Yeah.
that whole pattern. So that's why, like, bringing this back was so important, because I realized also it wasn't my story that needs to be told in this. It's your story. It's all the guest stories. It's the individuals that are on the show that makes the show. Right.
Yep.
And the connecting of dads to what you said, allowing a community or a platform where dads can be vulnerable and share the fact that we're not always in control of everything, even though we
Mhm.
try to portray we are, and that sometimes we just need a friend or something to hang out with and to share
Yep.
stories and vent with. So I appreciate you sharing a lot of these stories. Is before we sign off, what's the best thing about being a grandfather?
You know, so probably the thing I like most, and so here's the thing is, I'm the youngest child in my family by 8 years. So I get to see all these stupid stuff that my siblings do. And like my and if any of them watch it, they won't, but if they did, like, my oldest sister is 13 years older than me, and she treats her grandkids like they're her kids. And it's like everybody's raising them. And for me, I'm like, man, I did that. I am not raising my grandkids. You guys had them, you guys raise them. You know what? When I'm around it's not to say, like, when mom and dad go out on a date, that if they're doing something stupid, I'm just like, hey, stop doing something stupid or whatever. Because I do, I'll, you know, but my job is not to discipline. My job is not to do any of that. I leave that to the parents. They do their thing. I, um, I just grandparent. I'm just there to have fun. I'm just there to laugh at my kids because payback's hell, and it's fun to sit back and watch, them, kids do stuff that they did or whatever, and then it's like, yeah, that's pretty funny from where I sit. So that's probably the best part. The best part is that as a parent, often everything's a big deal. Like, you're like, and then when you're a grandparent, it's like nothing's really a big deal, and it's pretty cool.
I think there's a lot of power in that, in that saying right there. There's a lot of advice that maybe some of the things that like young, like parents like myself that are, when I say young parents, meaning in the young stages with their
Yeah,
children,
yeah,
is like, I feel is a huge issue. And I'm sure my dad sits back and is like, but it's going to be fine. Like,
yeah.
chill out. He's actually, I think, said that to me a couple
Oh
times.
yeah,
Like, buddy, you're like getting worked up on this. It's not that big of a deal. I promise. You
yeah,
know?
exactly. I mean, it's pretty funny because you sit back and you're just like, yeah, just not that doesn't even register as anything, and you just had your head blow off your neck, and it's nothing.
So I want to end it with this. Is there anything that you would advice that you would give to new new parents or soon to be parents, or just all the experiences you've had? Like, what's just a piece of advice you'd give to that a dad that's going to go through that journey or is just starting his journey?
You know, a couple things. One is, and this is probably something you get from people all the time, is one is just enjoy the journey, just enjoy it and love your children, and don't overdo it. Everything doesn't have to be an experience. I mean, sometimes just being in the same room is enough. It doesn't have to be, we're gonna go to Disneyland or we're gonna go to do this or that. It's just time together. It's not even necessarily the quality time, it's the quantity time. And just be there. That's one thing. The other thing is, is as you look at, you know, you're in such a capsule as a young parent that you don't even ever stop to think that someday I'm going to be a parent to adult children, and they're going to be adults, and um, and just kind of remember that as you deal with your parents, just remember that that you like left the house at 16. Maybe you did at 18 for real or whatever. But for your parents, they're still raising you. They're still in like parent mode, and you're like, I'm gone. Why are you still raising me? And it wasn't until I was 27 years old. I'm sorry, until my oldest child was 27 years old, that I realized, and that was 3 years ago, that it was time for me to shut it off. I'm not a parent like that anymore. And the reason why it happened then for me was because that's how old I was when I lost my dad. And I went, wow, man, I was on my own at 27, no dad. And I went, wow, why am I giving my kids advice? Why am I telling them this? Or why am I telling them that? And it takes parents a while to shut off parenting. And so just kind of realize that when your parents are like getting in your business, just like they haven't shut off the parent thing yet. Hopefully they do at some point. But I tell my kids now, I'm like, I got plenty of advice. I got lots of advice, but you got to ask for it. And I'm not giving it anymore unless you want it. So, there's kind of just, when you have both sides, you're managing being a child, an adult child, and you're managed being a parent to little kids. And you're kind of in that sandwich, and everybody's learning together.
I love that, Tab. I seriously love that. I hope your kids do listen to this episode because I want them to hear that end part right there so that they can come and they can ask you more questions because I think those are the things that at the end we can never get back.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
spending that time learning as much you can from, I mean, you can learn just as much from asking somebody about the mistakes that they've made as like getting just positive advice. Go out there and crush it or do whatever. It's like, no, tell me the real story. Like what
yeah.
happens when you're starting a business? What happens when you were, a dad and frustrated and felt like you want to just shake me in the time, but you had to deal with it. Like those are the things that I hope
Yeah.
your kids can like ask you those questions because I know that you have a lot to offer them. And
Well, it's funny, man. Nobody thinks that their parents have this stuff, right? So it's like it is what it is. I mean, it's like you may not understand the wisdom that is before you because you're looking for wisdom without. And it's life. I think we all do that.
Well, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the wisdom that you were providing today on the show, my friend. And
Yeah, man.
yeah, for taking your time. I know you're a very busy man, and to give me your time and help other dads realize they're not alone in this journey means a lot to me. And
Well,
I, yeah, appreciate you.
well, thank you. I appreciate being on. This was a blast.